Saludos, ¿qué tal? Gracias por mirar este video. Some of you may want to know, what is the cost of living in the Dominican Republic? So on that note, I just want to talk about how much Gary and I were paying for our studio apartment in the Dominican Republic. How much rent is down there really depends on where you live. So there's so much that can be said on this topic, guys. I'm only going to scratch the surface. So feel free to leave your comments below if there are options that I don't mention, or you have just another experience. Go ahead and put your experience down in the comment section. Again, I'm just sharing my personal experience with you guys. When we were living in Santo Domingo, we basically had a studio. At first, we were living with Gary's parents for a while, but then we moved out and we rented a studio for maybe roughly a year or so. We lived there for a while. We basically lived in that studio until we moved here to New York. So just to give you an idea of at least rent in Santo Domingo and how much we were paying, I have to tell you right now, we were paying a ridiculously cheap amount. Like, you're probably not even going to believe me when I tell you this. We were paying roughly, at the time, I think it was around $50 US a month for our studio. I think at that time that was around 2,700 Dominican pesos a month. Here's the deal about that though. We did not live in a tourist area. Don't think it's the same kind of apartment. We're not talking about the same kind of apartment at all. A lot of the houses down there are made out of concrete. If I'm not mistaken, they're made out of concrete. Our particular studio at first did not have any pipes for water to come in. So we were on the second level, so we would have to go downstairs and get water out of the cistern, pour it into a bucket and bring it upstairs. I'm gonna show you. We used to take this bucket and go out and go downstairs. The only problem is it's raining now, so I don't know if I can show you. So if we needed to take a bath, wash dishes, or whatever, we would have to get the water that we got out of the cistern. After some time of living there, the owner had pipes installed, which is where the bathroom was. It's kind of hard to talk about it because unless you're used to this kind of living, you may not know what I'm actually talking about. Just with having that pipe coming in, it wasn't like having a shower head or something like that, or having a sink. It at least allowed for water to be pumped up, and then we would pour that in the bucket or whatever and still use the water out of the bucket for whatever we needed to do. I did used to live in the more, I guess, expensive area of Santo Domingo. I lived in a number of different areas. The first area that I lived in was La Zona Universitaria. That was also close to La UAS and also the school Dominico Americano. I also live in Quisqueya. I also live close to La Universidad Apec. And then lastly, I had moved over to like Santo Domingo Este. Quisqueya, La Zona Universitaria, and living close to Apec, like in those areas, a lot of houses there are more like what you may be used to here in the United States, but you also pay more money for that. So when I was looking into getting my own place at one point, I think one of the places that I found was like $600, and it was in a nice area. It was close to George Washington Avenue, which is like close to the Hilton and Crown Plaza. I think that apartment was around $600. When I first moved there, I was living with the family, and I think I was paying around $500, and that was for living in La Zona Universitaria. When I was also looking for some places on my own, some of the places I was looking at was around like 17,000 pesos a month. So again, how much you pay really just depends on where you're looking at living. If you have family down there, of course, that is going to help out significantly. For foreigners specifically, I feel like until you really become Dominicanized, I don't suggest living in a place where your rent is probably going to be around $50 a month like us. And that's just because I feel like you need to become, what I just like to say is, Dominicanized first. If you are a foreigner, you have no experience with the Dominican Republic at all, you need to stick to trying to live close to where the tourist areas are. And then once you've been there for some time and you just learn more about the country and how to move around and just how everything works, then you can start looking at other options. So there is so much that can be said on this topic, but again, I just wanted to kind of scratch the surface. Again, if you're looking at the cost of living in the Dominican Republic, well, at least you have an idea from what my experience was, a couple of years ago, before we moved here to New York. So at this point, there is going to be a circle that pops up. Go ahead and click on that so you can subscribe to this channel, and then make sure you turn on notifications right after you subscribe. There will also be some videos that pop up. Go ahead and click on one of those so that you can see more of Gary and I, more of the Dominican Republic, and some Dominican Spanish.